Back in the 80s, my dad had a friend who collected comics with him. We'll call him Victor. Victor and my dad collected different things, but both of them ended up with a pretty sizable collection of the Fantastic Four. Four adventurers who happened upon cosmic rays that gave them superpowers, who are now flying by the seat of their pants through the unknown. Victor collected the title because he loves Doctor Doom. If this series were about analyzing Victor's collection and what it says about him, then I think I'd be having a field day right now. My dad, on the other hand, didn't have much interest in any of it. He didn't collect just to keep up with Victor, mind you. He didn't really care what that guy collected. He mostly just collected the Fantastic Four books because that's what you did at the time. They were Marvel's first family, and they were relevant to any comic collector worth the cheapest book in their collection. The Fantastic Four stack is the most daunting one I've faced yet, and the only thing he could tell you about the stories now is that the Thing mutated and looked weirder. So what's in the stack that's so quintessential to the Marvel universe at the time? Why did my dad feel the need to collect if he never really felt invested in the stories? And what happened to that quality in the book that made it a must-have? I'm Buddy, you can call me Bud, and this is... Today I'm talking about my dad's collection of Fantastic Four comics, which is one of my personal favorite titles, even though it wasn't one of his. The Fantastic Four are very obviously, from the jump, a family. They're a team of superheroes, yes, they're also a team of explorers, but all of that is used more to color in the background of the relationships at play. Reed Richards is Mr. Fantastic, the stretchy leader of the group. His wife, Sue Storm, is the Invisible Woman, who can turn herself invisible and project force fields, but also often acts as the voice of reason for the group. Her brother, Johnny Storm, is the Human Torch. He can light himself on fire and loves playing pranks, such as stealing the love interest of Reed Richards' best friend, Ben Grimm, who's the Thing. The Thing is the reader's focus for a good portion of the run. He's trapped in that rocky physical state, and he thinks that makes him unlovable to any person. The only woman who has ever loved him is now marrying one of his closest friends. That close friend asked him to be the best man at the wedding. Can you believe I haven't mentioned the villain of the story yet? When the story opens, the Thing is just rejoining the Fantastic Four, and he's still pretty uncertain of his place. He's a character that's known for his temper, but his emotions are getting the better of him more and more, and he feels like he can't just stick around and wait for something to happen. We'll get there, but let's not discount the non-soapy parts of the book. First of all, if this specific run of the Fantastic Four is the reader's introduction to comic books in general, they may feel like it would be easier for them to learn a new language. If that's you, I promise you it's not. Learning a new language is actually hard. It's just that especially in this series of comics, the Fantastic Four are strangers to nobody. They have met just about everybody who is active in the Marvel Universe at this point, and their door is open to all of them. When the run opens, the She-Hulk is a member of the team, having replaced the Thing. The Human Torch has dated an Inhuman. Reed and Sue were both part of the Avengers. The Thing was part of the West Coast Avengers. I mean, it's kind of crazy how all over the place these characters have been. And again, their door is open to just about anybody in the universe, except for Doctor Doom. They do not like it when Doctor Doom is anywhere near them. That might seem a little overwhelming, but it actually works really well with the pace of the stories. When somebody's introduced to a story, you're caught up just enough to know why they're relevant to the team and why they're going to be relevant to the story that's happening. But it also gives the feeling of a more lived-in comic book world. The characters don't just meet up every time somebody needs saving. They feel more like they're meeting up as friends, colleagues, or just anyone who might need help from the Fantastic Four. Spider-Man makes an appearance, and it's literally just to chastise the Human Torch for stealing the Thing's girlfriend. Because at this point, they're best friends in the comic books. The books also really push the reader to feel curious about everybody who comes into the stories, because the Fantastic Four are that way, about everything. They're not just superheroes who fly out anytime somebody needs them, but they're explorers, and they literally look for trouble. they also love to help people, not just each other, and it's when the Thing realizes this early in the run that he realizes the power that the Fantastic Four has to help heal people. Still, the Human Torch did fall in love with the Thing's girlfriend, and the Thing thinks that one might be hard to get over. Reed and Sue come up with a great solution, and leave. They've also been worried about Franklin, so they think that they're going to take the time away from the team to look after him. But they also believe that giving Ben the position of leadership will help him work through his problems. They task Ben with finding the 2 new members for the Fantastic Four, and to their credit, Ben does actually take the opportunity to bring in Johnny's ex-girlfriend and also the person he currently has a crush on. I still have not mentioned the villain yet. Wait, shit, I was supposed to have mentioned the villain already. To be fair, the main villain of these stories, Dr. Doom, is kind of undercut on his villainy because he spends the entire story stranded away from his position of power as the King of Latveria because he brainwashed a boy into thinking the boy was Dr. Doom, and then the boy, thinking he was Dr. Doom, overthrew the real Dr. Doom. But he is there, and he talks so much shit. Anyways, once the Thing's done being petty for a while, the position as leader really does start to help him grow and move on from his anger. He realizes through helping Miss Marvel that anger and isolation that he was putting himself through don't help him grow, and in the end, he needed to move past it in order to heal himself, and needs to help Miss Marvel move past it in order for her to heal. The Human Torch, on the other hand, falls in love with his first love, the Inhuman that Ben put on the team specifically to distract him. And then he's just like, oh, but I'm married, so I have a responsibility. It's like, the first thing you did was fall in love with somebody else. Eventually, the Torch's first love leaves, though, so that she can get back together with her ex-husband, leaving Johnny to feel shitty about how shitty he was being. It can be a little frustrating to read this story because the run is presenting it like Johnny knows that he's immature and he wants to grow up, but every time he thinks or says anything, it just seems to be the wrong thing. His attempts at growing up include stealing Ben's girlfriend and then leaving her every chance he gets after marrying her for the Fantastic Four, and then falling in love with another woman, and then telling that woman that he's in love with her, but that he won't do anything because he's not married. He comes off a little bit better on the action side of things. When the Fantastic Four go out and have to fight villains, his powers are often used in very creative ways during the story. It's usually a nice spectacle to distract from how terrible the relationship side of his story is. He has good intentions throughout, but it sort of ends up not mattering because his good intentions cause him to miss glaringly obvious things that he should be focusing on in order to actually change and grow as a person. The collection wraps up with Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman rejoining the team, which is celebrated with a fight as always, and then left on a cliffhanger as Ben Grimm is transformed into a human? The rule in comics is that a lot of times if a big change is made in a narrative, it will eventually revert back to normal because there's a certain status quo that needs to be kept. This is done for dual purposes. One, it gives writers a blank slate to launch off of in order to tell the stories that they always want to tell with these popular characters. And two, it gives the readers a chance to focus on how eventually everything will be back to normal so they can face their biggest foe, change. My dad's collection begins and ends with the Fantastic Four reuniting and going back to their status quo, but what's nice about these books is that there is a lot of change that happens when they're outside their status quo. As long as the characters stay relatively within their dynamic, Reed doesn't start watching Fox News, Sue doesn't automatically ditch the family to go get some fishtail anytime she wants to, Johnny doesn't become a neat freak, and the Thing never ever fixes his temper issues, we can really explore how these characters grow up over time, especially how they've grown up in relation to the Marvel Universe. Take this run for example. Even though it begins and ends with the Fantastic Four working together, the reader can now believe after reading this run of stories that the Thing is a more capable leader than he would have been. He doesn't necessarily need to fix every problem he's ever had, but now you know that parts of him have grown that weren't there before. All of this ties in thematically to the idea of the team as a family, whose faith and trust in each other helps them to grow as they explore any corner of the universe they happen to fall into. This run on the Fantastic Four is all about growth. Ben Grimm grows through almost every issue of this run, not just the ones where he mutates, and he credits that growth to his place on the team and how it's helped him heal over the years. The reason the Fantastic Four have such a good standing, not just as a team in the Marvel Universe, but also as a title in the regular old universe, is because they were Marvel's first family, and they sort of brought together the Marvel Universe as it's known not just then, but today. The title First Family can be a bit misleading. They're not actually the first superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Fan favorite Captain America, Sue's favorite Namor, and nobody's favorite, the original android Human Torch, all predate the Fantastic Four by a lot, but still, the Fantastic Four have a reputation for being the sort of beginning of the Marvel Universe. They're known as the First Family because when the title started, the team distinguished themselves from the nearly perfect superheroes that were also running at the time by bitching incessantly at each other. The loyalty that is associated with the team is due to how long they have been together despite literal decades of nonsense that's there from the very start. They're family because they're always there for each other even when it's not that fun. Now, if you're scratching your heads because the stories I just talked about feature two of the members leaving the team because it was getting hard, and one of the members literally stealing the love interest of another, that makes sense. Stories are handled with care so as not to go against the established nature of the team. When Reed and Sue leave, it's not because they dislike the other members, it's because they think it's the only way that Ben will grow. There's an old series that Cracked used to do called After Hours, and in one of the episodes, they talk about the four humors, or more accurately, they talk about how everybody deep down in their soul is actually one of the four Ninja Turtles.
Soren, you like Leonardo because he's honor-bound and loyal.
We've got to save him from his own destructiveness.
I like Michelangelo because he's reckless. Hilarious. And Dan, you like Donatello because he's a nerd and he's open to sexual electronics.
First of all, does machines isn't literal.
To put it simply, a lot of core foursomes and stories happen to fall within a certain pattern. There's usually a leader, a voice of reason, a party dude, and an angry one. Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing, respectively. With that structure in mind and the team's long history of crossing over with other titles, it makes sense that the team would actually be able to switch out members rather effectively. For example, when this run opens up, the Thing is not a member of the team, and She-Hulk has taken his place as the angry person. So what makes Sue and Reed's departure later in the run interesting is that it actually allows Ben to grow from one position in this structure to the other. He goes from being the angry person to the leader, and that growth is reflected in how he acts and operates in the stories. His first idea as leader of the team is that he needs to bring on people who could benefit from the healing involved with being on the team. He thinks the team helped him grow, so he wants to show other people that they can grow too. When he actually starts trying to support people, though, he realizes how difficult that support can actually be and starts to step into the shoes of the people who helped him. He sees that it's frustrating and hard when somebody won't open up, and he's realizing that his job as a leader is to be patient and wait and hope. And by the second or third issue he's the leader, you can really feel that that change has happened, and you can really respect that he's now serving the role that Mr. Fantastic did before him. And the Human Torch is much weirder. It turns out later on that the version of Alicia Masters, the Thing's love interest that he married, is actually a Skrull who fell in love with him, but you don't really find that out in this collection of books, so it's played really, really hard like he just stole the Thing's girlfriend. So without that information, one might find themselves going, gee, why did the Human Torch marry his best friend's most famous love interest? And why does she seem so casual about the real-life damage it is doing to the Thing, because obviously it would? Why on earth is this written like the portion of the story that's for the Human Torch growing thematically. Everybody who talks to him about it is like, look, he's such a big boy. He's a married husband now. He's really growing up. But he's not. He keeps leaving his new wife to go hang out with the Fantastic Four, which includes the first person he was ever in love with, who he is developing a new crush on, and he is so casual about it all, and he thinks that he's being a good guy by telling her that he is in love with her, but that he's not going to do anything about it because he's married. And the whole thing is played straight. It's alright, though, because she was a Skrull, so everything that happens here just doesn't count. As for the fate of the title after this run, unfortunately, it wasn't looking great for a while. Comic books have a nasty habit of bending themselves in reaction to whatever feature film adaptation is coming out at the time. So when the MCU became popular, they started to push more of the MCU heroes to the forefront of the comic book. But while Fantastic Four is a Marvel comic, and some might even call it the Marvel comic, any feature film adaptation was not owned by Marvel at the time. It was owned by Fox. And so during that time, where there weren't rights to the Fantastic Four feature films for Marvel to profit off of, they sort of buried the Fantastic Four because they didn't really want to make any effort for a book that wouldn't boost their feature film profits. For a while, certain Marvel fans, specifically ones who mostly like to keep up with the movies and all the relevant content to the movies, didn't even think about the Fantastic Four at all, because they had simply become irrelevant to the overarching Marvel universe. However, good news is that the Fantastic Four rights now belong to Marvel again. They're going to make their MCU debut very soon, and so all will be well, because it'll make the MCU money. I have a tendency in these videos to compare my dad to the superheroes that I'm reading about, especially their good qualities and their heroic qualities, and it would be easy to do the same thing here with the Fantastic Four. There's plenty of heroic and morally good and righteous things to talk about. It would actually be particularly easy to compare him to the Angry Thing, because it's the sort of comparison that would fluster him and thus end up proving itself. But in analyzing this collection, I'm not supposed to be thinking about my dad, the superhero. I'm supposed to be thinking about the boy who collected them. The lad, even. So, who was Cort as a kid? Well, my dad has a tendency to say that he had a Leave It to Beaver childhood. It was perfect, by all accounts. If you were to come to a family reunion, you would probably understand what he means. The family is happy together, and they remain close-knit to this day. However, they, or we, do have a certain way of speaking. Sentences rarely, if ever, end in periods. They actually tend to run over one another, as every single one of the 16 people in the room try to get their sentences going. We don't argue. Although you would be forgiven for thinking that we do, because all of the things that we say to each other are structured a lot like an argument, and especially if a conversation is getting particularly boring, the sentences can become inflammatory, a lot like an argument. I think comparing his family to cartoon beavers or whatever that show was about usually fits the context he needs it to, in that he's saying that he had a perfectly good childhood. It was great. Even. If you want to talk about how the family actually feels, is, and loves each other, I think a lot more sense comes from comparing them to the Fantastic Four. To be fair, a lot of content comes from that too. Perhaps young Cort related to those family dynamics, the idea of arguing but it not really meaning anything. Perhaps young Cort too stole his brother's girlfriend from right under his nose, but perhaps the whole thing turned out to be fake, just like in these books, so everyone could forget about it. Who knows what's not being said at those family dinners? Honestly, who knows what is being said at those family dinners? There's a lot of interrupting. It is strange, though, because he collected a lot of these, and by no means does this title rank near his top. He wouldn't just buy the book because it was popular. He doesn't really do things like that. So maybe he bought the books because of the Marvel Universe unfolding within them. The whole collection in general is a lot more Marvel-based. There's only really a few Superman and Batman titles in there, and other than that, it's completely Marvel from exactly this time period with exactly this type of story unfolding around it. It makes sense too. Between these and the Daredevil comics I've read, there's something really unique about this era of the comics. It's not really the same feeling as the MCU, where everything sort of fits together like a puzzle piece, the size of a puzzle of the United States military. Instead, it feels more organic. Characters come in and out randomly, and it's not always relevant to the story at play. You read one of these stories, and all the other stories unfolding around it peek in at random times, but only to color the story that you're currently reading. Every stray adventure has assisting titles and issue numbers, and it's chaotic, but it's also organized, just like the Four, and maybe just like young Cort? I'm not asking you, it's just a thought to leave you on. Might be relevant, might not. I don't know. Next week, actually...